Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. If you're new here, I am Tammy at Tam's Creative Corner, and today I thought I'd try my hand at another glittery seascape. I'm gonna go all glitter on you guys this time. I'm gonna do a gold glitter beach and then some glitter in the sea, and we'll just see what happens from there. So if you want to join me on this sparkly adventure of creativity, then let's get started. Here I am using my favorite Scotch masking tape, and I'm taping off the back of the board. I've already painted the front and sealed the board with wood sealer. Now I'm just going to trim off that tape and we're ready to start painting my base coat before we start pouring that resin. And if you're curious about any of the supplies that I'm using in the video, I will make sure to list them in the description down below the video, and I'll include links where they're available. You don't really need to paint your board. I like to do it just to give me a kind of rough draft, an idea of how I'd like my resin to flow when I start pouring it. You could also just paint your board and do a clear coat of resin if you wanted to do that too. But at any rate, it's really relaxing for me to just paint and no biggie. So I'm moving on and getting ready to pour my resin. And these are some of my favorite supplies that I use and my must-haves. And we're going to start with some art resin, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And I'm going to mix more than I need for this beach because I'm working on 2 seascapes at once, and the other one you'll see in a later video. I'm dividing my resin up in cups, one for my gold, and this is just resin with gold glitter. I just thought I would give this a try for my beach. I realize this looks kind of gross, but I think it's kind of pretty in the end. It was a little darker than I was going for, but this is trial and error always. I have all these crystals, and so I wanted to put a little bit of a quartz crystal cluster in my beach, and you do that while the resin's wet, of course, that way it adheres to the surface. And then I take this recycled tumbled glass that I have, and I went ahead and lined my beach with that too, just to give it a little more dimension. I allow that resin beach to cure overnight, and then I move on and I mix up another batch of art resin. And this time I'm going to add blue glitter to my resin, and I'm going to just put down a coat of sparkly blue on the sea part. The reason I do this is because I kind of want a little bit of that underwater sparkle to shine through, because this piece will have several layers of resin on it. I did another seascape with a bigger, chunkier glitter, and it really turned out beautiful. I'll link that one above if you haven't already seen it. It's really a pretty piece, and I've had a lot of comments on that one. So again, I've let that cure overnight, and I'm moving on to a new layer. I'm dividing my resin up into portions because I'm going to add some color to those. And with the rest of my clear resin, I smooth it over the surface. And this will help preserve some of that underwater sparkle we want to keep. And it also helps the rest of your resin blend and move more fluid through the piece. I'm just running my torch over it to pop any bubbles, and then I'm going to mix up a little white epoxy pigment by Armor Art to use for my waves, and this aquamarine pigment by Counterculture DIY, and some powder pigment by Resin. Now that I have my pigmented resin put down on the board, I'm going to use my all-favorite heat gun and blend those colors up a bit before going on and adding in some white. And then I'm going to use that same heat gun and give those waves a little bit of foam and froth look. This heat gun is amazing because it has 2 speeds and it also has a variable temperature dial on the back. I'm absolutely loving this heat gun. The great thing about art resin is it has a really long work time. So you guys are seeing the sped up and edited down portion of this, where actually I work each section for at least an hour, and that's how long this resin really holds up for me. So that's why I love working with art resin on my seascapes. And here is what that looks like up close. You can see a little bit of cell and activity. And so I'm going to let this cure and then move on to another layer. Because I built up my beach with that tumbled glass and the crystals, I'm going to tape off the ocean part of my piece with this aluminum tape. That way I can build up the layers of resin until it can flow over the crystals on my beach. The reason to use the aluminum tape is because when you're heating and using your torch and heat gun, that won't catch on fire. So obviously that's the best choice when you're building layers up and working with resin and heat. So I've mixed up some more resin and I've added a little bit of pigment. One was alcohol ink for the more translucent, lighter color. And again, the aquamarine by Counterculture DIY for the darker pigment. And then I'm just gonna use those and blend them all over the board with my hands. I love getting my hands in resin and just working it. After dividing up some resin into some cups, I'm taking that same product by Counterculture, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make gradient colors out of the same pigment. So I mix up one that's darker, then I take a dip out of that, mix into a second one, which creates it a little bit lighter tone, and then I take that and I dip it into my third cup, and that creates an even more translucent one. It's awesome when you can use just the one pigment to create 3 different gradient colors of the same color tone. So that's what I'm doing, and then I'll start and I'll go darker to lighter on my piece toward the beach. And then with the clear resin that I've reserved, I layer that right along the beach because that's where I'm going to add in my white for some more waves. So this layer is just about done, and I'm going to let it cure and start on another layer. Don't forget you can reuse your TCP measuring cups. You just leave your mixing stick in along the side, and the next day you can pull the resin right out. So I went ahead and went in with my Stickles glitter glue and added a few little sparkle highlights to the next layer before I began pouring some more resin. And this pigment is also by Counterculture DIY. It's Tsunami. I love this color. And I mixed in just very little because I want to keep this layer translucent. And then I'm going to spread it out and begin creating another layer of waves with my armor art. If you're seeing something that you have questions about, feel free to leave me a question down in the comments below. And if you like what I'm doing, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. That sure helps me out a lot and lets me know to keep making these videos for you. So I let this layer cure and I'm ready to move on to the next and final layer. The first thing I need to do is remove that aluminum tape, and it's so easy. You just heat it up and it comes right off. And then I trim out the sides to get rid of those sharp edges, and using my alcohol wipes I clean off the surface before moving on to my final coat. And in this layer I'm just putting down a clear coat of resin, and then I'm going to add some more waves to make a final wave line rolling up onto the beach, and then I let it cure, and this is the final result. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments below, and hit that thumbs up if you like what I'm doing. And as always, I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for watching my videos and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Happy creating, everyone.